Just because God knows who is going to be saved does not mean that God is the one causing them to be saved. Calvinism, I think, incorrectly makes this assumption. And a good story, if you're interested in this, a good story where you can see something that God foreknows, but it does not come to pass, is in 1 Samuel chapter 23, verses 9 through 12. Again, if you're interested in that. Second, election, the language of election. Now, the language of election doesn't show up in this passage, but it's almost always a part of this discussion, so I'm going to just make a brief comment about it here. Election does not necessarily mean salvation. Election does not equate to salvation. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Depends on the context. So the question that we must ask whenever we run across this word election is, elected for what? For what purpose is the election occurring? Again, in the Old Testament, God elected the Jews, He elected Israelites. He commonly refers to them as the elect, but elect for what purpose? In the Old Testament, God's election of the Jews was to use them as a vehicle through whom the Messiah would come and bless all of the people of all of the nations. That's what they were elected for. Election in that sense does not mean salvation. Now it could if they believed in the Lord, but doesn't have to mean that. If election in that sense just meant salvation, then all of the Jews would be saved just because they're Jewish, which then in turn would mean that Judas Iscariot is now in heaven. Or all of the Baal worshipers, or all of the Molech worshipers in the Old Testament who did not believe in the Lord and were not faithful to the Lord are in heaven because they are quote-unquote elect. So election, the language of election, does not necessarily equate to salvation. Depends on the context.